Gang members brought up on RICO charges by District Attorney Fani Willis. The suspects tied to a 6-year-old street gang called Drug Rich.
They use things like prescription bottles and money symbols, and this is in their jewelry and their tattoos, and we see that present here.
Those symbols include the letters RX and Monopoly symbols, and the DA's office used those symbols and the suspects' social media to tie each other together, saying it's proof they knew each other, conspired together, and promoted their enterprise online. Suspect Kenzel Walker, going by Clairvoyant on Facebook, holding money while wearing a Monopoly chain. Walker, one of the suspects accused of breaking into Mariah Carey's home. Alleged gang member Robert Gunter, posting a photo of him holding a gun, wearing an RX hat and chain. Gunter, accused of attempting to break into an Atlanta United player's home. It's this song posted on YouTube featuring suspect Taylon Barnes. The lyrics, "Sticking people up, how you think I got those kicks on my feet," and "Creeping in our back door, take your stuff, then I sell it to my big bros." A photo of Barnes on Instagram holding a gun and wearing jewelry with RX insignia. Barnes accused of attempted murder and burglary. This is just a snapshot of evidence pulled from social media accounts of the 26 suspects, but Willis believes it connects each suspect to each other and multiple crimes.
RICO is a tool that allows a prosecutor's office and law enforcement to tell the whole story. And so we use it as a tool so that they can have all the information they need to make a wise decision.
The DA's office used similar evidence against Young Thug, Gunna, and members of the alleged YSL gang and the May indictment of the rappers and 25 others. Legal experts' opinions differed on whether rap lyrics can be or cannot be used as strong proof of crimes. There are
Welcome to another episode of the Jay Lex Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Lex. Please like, share, and subscribe to the content. You know where to find it. Thank you for rocking with me today. Today's topic: should rappers be imprisoned for the lyrics that they put into their music? We know this has been something that's been going on probably for a long time now, even dating back to the early to mid 90s. You know, hip hop, we know about the hip hop police in New York City. We know about everything related to that. The question that I have is, should this be a practice? Because let's remember, in this country, we still have our First Amendment right to freedom of expression, to freedom of speech, and things along those lines. But my question is, does that still apply? Yes, you still have the right to freedom of speech, freedom of expression, all those things. But can a rapper's lyrics be used against them in a court of law? I know Jay-Z's talked about this in the past, and I believe other artists have as well, not having that being used against them in a court of law, because obviously they don't want people going to prison just over rap lyrics, because ultimately at the end of the day, it's his entertainment. But we know recently that a rapper by the name of Lil Baby was brought up on RICO charges, which is a huge, you've been hearing about it a lot recently. There's also been there was a gang, I forget the name of the gang out in Atlanta, brought up on, I think, 200 plus charges, like a 94-page indictment. It's a crazy amount of charges. I won't get into all the details, all the nitty-gritty. I'm not a legal expert. I don't want to do that. But my question is, not only should they be allowed to use those lyrics, I also have the question of, at what point does hip hop get away from all the talk about violence, all the self-snitching, as I like to call it? At what point do people evolve and move on from this? Not to say that you can't talk about your past, not to say that you can't talk about maybe the things that you've done from an educational standpoint, so that the next person doesn't do that, or the fear, Biggie talked about, in his first album, Ready to Die, just basically the fear and paranoia of essentially being a drug dealer. You already know what it is if you're a rap fan or a hip hop fan. Shout out to the Rap Roundtable. They were talking about this too yesterday on their show. You can check them out on YouTube. While I don't believe that the district attorney, I believe her name is Fani Willis, she's a district attorney out in Atlanta, who brought the RICO charges against the gang as well as Lil Baby. I could be wrong on that. At some point, there has to be responsibility taken on the parts of the individuals and or people who are putting this music out there, understanding that people are watching you. You have to move carefully when things like this go on. And why do I say that? Because Atlanta has risen, or crime in Atlanta has risen exponentially. There was a whole thing where, I forget the name of the gang, but they were basically targeting different celebrities that lived in the Atlanta metro area. There's been a period of time in the past week or so where there was like 20 people shot or something along those lines. People have been robbed and all these other things. And this district attorney, I don't know her, never met her, is obviously trying to I guess, get rid of crime, but also trying to make a career for herself. That's what district attorneys do. ADAs, all these political people are looking to move up in their career. And you have these rappers, these young guys. I don't know what their home lives were like. I may have an idea, but I don't want to speculate. But at some point, there has to be a responsibility taken by these young men, and they're men. They pay taxes. If they pay taxes, they're not in high school anymore. We live obviously in the internet age. There's no more secrets. Very few secrets left in the world. Like, everything is out in the open. You have to move carefully. You have to move more intelligently. You can't just be out here talking about crimes that you committed, and you don't have, statute of limitations. Obviously, differs based upon the state that you live in and the crime that's been committed. Now, I'm not going to get into, well, let me phrase that. We all know that obviously crime is wrong. But when you're in a desperate situation, I understand, as long as you don't hurt the next person, why crimes are committed. You're hungry. You feel that you don't have any other options, so you turn to that life. Okay, it happens. It's unfortunate, but it does. It's just a part of life. But what needs to happen with these young men, putting aside, guidance and things along those lines, because we already know that, at some point, these young men have to take responsibilities for the actions that they've committed. Or if they've committed these acts, I should say, they should move much more carefully. I get there's an entertainment value to it. I'm not as familiar with like drill music and stuff like that. Some people, so if you know about that a little more, please educate me. I don't listen to drill music, so I don't know what it is exactly. But you know what you can't also have? You also can't have gangs that are out here threatening and robbing, in particular, not that they're more special than the next person, in particular, though, people who have worked hard to get to a certain point in their lives, whether it's through entertainment, whether it's through some other means of making legal money. You cannot, I repeat, you cannot have these people scared for their lives. I know Atlanta at one point was one of the most bustling cities in all of America. A lot of black people, whether you were from there or you moved down there, worked really hard. I think there's like $1 million, like $1 million row of mansions where predominantly black people live. That's where they want to live. They worked really hard. And if you think for 2 seconds that those people worked their butts off, lost sleep, got educated, became really good at a sport or some other form of entertainment, the Tyler Perrys of the world, or I think it was Calvin Ridley was one of the people who was targeted. And you think that these people, because you share a similar skin tone, are going to sit there and allow their investment. And remember something, your house is not just a place to live in. The city that you live in is not just some place that you reside. You have invested in that town. I don't care if it's New York City. We see crime up in New York City exponentially. Just the other day, we saw, I think it was 91st Street. Somebody gets robbed. The person supposedly had $15,000 to $20,000 on them. Why? I have no idea. Nevertheless, a black car comes in, bumps the guy in the middle of the street onto the sidewalk, bumps him again, and he gets robbed at gunpoint in broad daylight in the middle of the day in New York City. Crime is up everywhere in a lot of major cities. Poverty is up. People are living on the streets, mental health issues, blah, blah, blah. You already know this story. If you think that people who have worked hard, who have busted their behinds, are going to sit there and allow their investment, whether it's in a city, whether it's in the neighborhood that they live in, their home, whatever the case might be, and you're going to have a bunch of people going around trying to rob them, steal from them, and you think it's just going to rock for some reason, and you think it's just going to randomly rock, it's not going to. I don't care if you are all the same skin tone. I don't care if you're from the same neighborhood. I don't care whatever the case might be. People have invested their time, their effort, their money, their finances. And now these neighborhoods that they either grew up in or that they transplanted to are now being run by or overrun by crime. And so now this district attorney specifically, she's not the first one, obviously. This district attorney says, we're going to use the social media posts and your lyrics to come down upon you and to arrest you and prosecute you. Now, do I think, obviously, as I said before, she's doing it to build her career. We know that the government, when it comes to prosecution, has a high conviction rate for a reason, because they know which cases to take on. But once again, when does it stop? When does crime stop? Like I said, most major cities right now, there's some semblance of crime going on. And what you can't have is young men, and women for that matter, out here committing crimes unnecessarily. Once again, people who have invested their time and their money into something are not going to watch their investment blow up in smoke because you want to act silly on Instagram talking about, all the crimes that you've committed. Why are you ratting on yourselves? I ask. Why are you talking about this in public? I ask. Why are you not waiting for the statute of limitations? I understand you have a story to tell. I understand. Why are you selling drugs, and why are you dealing in drugs and money laundering? Why are you flashing your money on the gram? This is stupid. I understand you want some street credibility and things along those lines. I've never personally been to prison. I'm thankful for that. I have a clean record. But I can't imagine it's a good thing to lose years of your prime, all because you're trying to keep it a G. One of my friends said it best. Being a thug doesn't pay the bills. Yes, the entertainment value of it does. But eventually, in particular with the Patriot Act going on, everything that you say, everything that's recorded, in particular on social media, is being listened to in real time. Social media should be used for two purposes: for legitimate business and to keep up with people that you care about. That's it. Why are you why are you snitching on yourselves? Why are young men in their physical prime and being able to make the kind of money that they're making doing shows, commercials, deals with brands, etc.? Why are these men, where is the guidance? And I get it. Some people grew up in a household where, their only option was to go and commit some crimes. I get it. Like I said, as long as you don't hurt the next person or kill somebody or something along those lines, I get you have to survive. I get it's not black and white. When you're hungry, when you're desperate, things happen. I understand. But at what point is it okay for these young men to be out here, young men for the most part, I know there's women in there too, to be committing these crimes, and then other people get upset, because I guess supposedly she's facing death threats, or people calling her, Uncle Tom and blah, 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 coon. At what point does hip-hop community, not just the black community, but hip-hop community, go to these young men and say, yo, y'all are bugging right now? At what point do we sit there and look and say, look, something has to be done about this? It seems like things are going backwards instead of moving forwards. And we can't blame, I heard there was some talk that, they're blaming the OGs for their old talk. Most of the guys who committed crimes back in the day, once again, did it out of desperation. And they talked about their lifestyle. But for the most part, excluding a few, they weren't committing crimes. They were talking about things they did in their past. They weren't committing the crimes in real time and then talking about it. Now, granted, there was no social media then. There were barely any cell phones. There were no smartphones. It was just like those big Zach Morris Saved by the Bell phones. So it was a different era. But at what point do we stop this? And do we give credit to this woman, despite the fact that she's, trying to make a career for herself, trying to move up, obviously? I'll reiterate it again. When you buy a piece of property, a business, whatever the case might be, you've taken time and you've made an investment. I don't care if it's a jewelry store. I don't care if it's a restaurant. I don't care what if you bought a McDonald's, if you bought into a Starbucks, if you bought into a 16 Handles, whatever the case might be, whatever business it is, your house, an apartment building, and now all of a sudden crime is going up. The values of those things that I just mentioned start to go down. Who wants to sit there and lose money? The whole point is to make money. All I hear from certain people within the black community and other communities as well, but the black community, is about a legacy. Leaving for the next generation. How can you sit there and leave for the next generation when the thing that you put your money into, the business, the home, whatever the case might be, is losing value? So is this woman right? To an extent. Because nobody who's investing that kind of time and effort wants to lose on that investment or investments. I don't know if it's guidance for these young men. I don't know what the story is, because they weren't the first one. There's a few other people who got into trouble as well, who I don't remember off the top of my head. But we've got to come to a middle point where we realize that this can't be the end all be all. It can't just be flashing money on the gram. Not to say you can't have fun, but you run into tax issues. And people are getting money laundering charges. Like, how do you get a money laundering charge when we can Venmo? How do you think you're going to get away with that when everything is digital? I don't understand it. We have to do better. Hip hop has to do better. It can't be this de-evolution. You have to evolve. You have to move on. Yes, I understand there's an entertainment value to it. How many young rappers, even beyond what I'm talking about, have lost their lives over utter nonsense, over beefs? Who's still beefing when most of you are rich? I get there's people out there who are hating, who don't want to see you successful for whatever reason. I don't even remember the number of rappers who've lost their lives, who have children, who are going to grow up without a father, mothers, siblings, etc. Hip hop needs to do better. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Jay Lex Podcast. Please like, subscribe, and share to the content. Take care.